Number one question, what type of business should I start going into 2024?
You should be focusing on a business that is going to play off either your passions, your strengths, your interests. So to just come up with an answer of what you should do may not match what you want to do. I think service businesses is a good sector to be in. Healthcare seems to be resilient, but that has to, fit for the specific individual. Those two, I would say, seem to be, faring well right now and possibly into 2024. There's a lot going on in the economy.
And especially on the healthcare side, you think about the barriers to entry are sometimes advantageous to you if you're willing to overcome those.
Yeah.
Because you're doing something that a lot of people can't do. And so like the competition is different. And if it's something like you said that you're passionate about, that's
I think that's key.
There are definitely trends out there that we should be aware of. Renewable energy. In New York especially, there's a big offshore wind push. There's going to be a lot of projects that are going on in the next few years. So I would say if you're trying to figure out where are we going in the region, I would say renewable energy and offshore wind. To me, the big question is, what is your passion? And we keep talking about this, and I know we've talked about it in past episodes, but I mean, you can read articles, see what the trends are, check Chat GPT, see what they say. But as an advisor, someone who is interested in your success, I would say, what are you interested in? Where do your skills lie? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And find out where you should be focusing your energy.
Right. Yeah, it might not make sense to go into renewables if you have no experience in either contracting, in engineering, or anything like that. Like
exactly.
It's just because the trend goes that way doesn't mean that that's where you need to go.
Correct.
That's probably one of the benefits of working with an advisor is you actually get to know the person on an intimate level.
Right. Like in New York especially, there are a lot of infrastructure projects. So construction is a big field that is very popular here in this region.
Yes.
Right? We have the MTA, we have Long Island Railroad, Port Authority, airports, all within this little space of Long Island and New York City. So if you were interested in like where are the opportunities, it would be infrastructure and construction.
Right.
But if you don't have any experience in that, you're not really set up for success.
Let's say step one's complete. We know what kind of business I want to start. So somebody walks in, comes into your office, says that I want to start a restaurant that specializes in, I don't know, maybe like fish. So
naturally.
And they say, or anything, you don't have to go the fish direction. So I would say, what is the first step for them to take? Or maybe take it the route of what's the first question that you would ask them?
Well, I would first understand their background, their experience. Why do they want to start a fish restaurant? Do they have experience in cooking fish, or do they have an amazing recipe that they want to share? What is the reason? What is the why for this? And then we would definitely start on the business plan. That's something I think should be the baseline, the foundation of any business is to have that business plan, because that will take you through a roadmap of what you need to think about as you're starting the business. So your mission, your vision, your operations, marketing, who is your audience? Who are you trying to target? How are you going to reach that audience? And then the financials, how are you going to pay for this?
Turns out like all the passion in the world doesn't pay the bills at the end of the month.
Right. And also you have to think about, all right, so how much does a fish cost? And
what kind of fish are we doing?
What kind of fish are we serving? And what is the menu going to look like? What are the ingredients? And what is going to be the cost? And what is going to be your pricing? So these are all things that are the foundation of starting a business, is that business plan.
Yeah, I'd say that one of the things that I've seen a lot of clients come in with that they're concerned about is just missing something. They have considered deeply, numerous aspects. Maybe it's the supply chain, maybe it's the financials, and maybe it's marketing. And what a business plan does, to your point, is it builds a structure. It is a structure. It's almost like a flow for them to go through. So if people want that kind of checklist that doesn't really exist, it kind of does exist through the business model, through the business plan.
Exactly. And then your business advisor can also fill in the blanks of those little things that you may not think of when you're writing the business plan. So for example, like the New York State small business development centers, they know about New York State regulations, right? So they know that if you're an LLC, you have to do the publication requirement. A business plan is not going to take you through that. They're not going to explain that to you, but business advisors know the local context of your area and will know the laws and regulations you need to follow.
And how up to date they are.
Right.
Because even that regulation is, I think it's being considered under a vote currently, or it just was. That can be a potential issue when it comes to the Chat GPT side.
Right.
Is how current are you? How current is your information?
Right.
Are you up to date with late breaking information such as that, such as changes in policy and regulation?
Exactly.
Regarding the MWBE certification process, what are the main considerations that a person or a business entity should take prior to applying?
So there is an assessment that they could take on the Empire State Development website, which goes through all of those kind of checklist requirements. Are you 51% owned by a woman or minority? Are you a for-profit business? Do you have less than 300 employees? Is your net worth less than 15 million? Kind of the checklist of all the things that you need to think about when you are applying for MWBE. Now, an advisor can go through with you, what does your business look like? And does your business fit kind of the programmatic requirements that MWBE has? Because there are programmatic requirements that may not be listed on the website, but advisors know the general idea of what is going to get through the program and what's not going to get through the program. I would say highly recommended to talk to a business advisor or someone who's knowledgeable about the process to make sure that not only are you checking off those eligibility requirements, but you're also meeting the programmatic requirements.
100%. When it comes to the relationships that advisors have, especially you in this particular case, you've been working in this certification process for a while. Is there an example of a story or an instance or even context that you have where you've been able to get information about what is going on with the certification with somebody who's applied? And do you have a deeper, more realistic understanding than what is blatantly listed for things such as timelines, expectations for certification completion, and of that nature?
Yes, absolutely. So the small business development centers have a direct line with Empire State Development and with the certifiers to understand what's going on in the background. You know, if there's a backlog of applications, what are the timelines for when an application will be looked at? So we definitely have more information for businesses regarding what happens in the background once an application is submitted. But also we understand what will be considered and what will not be considered. On the website or on the application, it says 51% owned and operated by a woman or minority. That's not enough, right? That's the basic eligibility requirement. But through our experience in getting people certified, we know that just having 51% is not enough. The woman or minority has to show complete control over the company. So they have to have the educational experience. They have to have the managerial experience. Their name has to be on every single corporate document.
Ooh, this one I made especially for you. Okay. What are the top 3 areas that I should consider before applying for a business loan?
This applies to regardless if it's an SBA loan or any other type of financing. You really have to be clear on why you need the money. You can't just go to a lender and say, I need $100,000. They're gonna press you. Well, what do you need the money for? You better be able to articulate that very well because you're not going to get a blank check for that. They're going to want to know what your plans are to how you're going to utilize this money, and more importantly, how you're going to pay it back. So before seeking out financing, you have to know how much you need, what you need it for, how you're going to put it to use, how you're going to repay it. That's the big one. How is this business going to repay the debt? That's what banks want to know. Banks are about mitigating risk. There are a lot of factors that come into play on the risk scale, even beyond just paying the loan back. There's economic risk, what's going on in the economy right now. Banks try to stay ahead of the curve. Business owners should also. I advise business owners, if you're not paying attention to the financial channels and you're keeping abreast of what's going on, it's very similar to not being prepared for a hurricane that's coming.
Let's count that as number 1. if I want to go a little bit deeper, if we go for like the top 3 things that somebody should be reflecting upon. So they need to get really clear on their why. Like, what is the purpose? It's not just to start the business.
Right.
It's like, what is the money actually doing? Where the dollars go?
Right.
That's what a bank wants to know. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
Once you have that why, before you make that proposal to the bank, are there any other key considerations that would either inhibit you or allow you to be more likely to get the loan?
Sure. When we're talking about the actual process, you want to make sure that you are going to present in the best light possible to the lender. Now, what does that mean? Well, we're all familiar with the term credit score. You want to make sure that your personal credit score is healthy. That's just one of the metrics that a lender is going to use to analyze the viability for the loan. They're going to look at a lot of things, but you want to make sure that your personal credit's in good shape.
Yeah, because whether you're an individual asking for money or you're the individual that's representing the business asking for money, wherever you go, there you are kind of a thing. And so that credit score, your personal credit score, is going to follow you through as a rating of your financial trustworthiness.
Right, your character.
All right. So jumping back to the business plan, what would you recommend to a client to be their very first focus of the business plan? Should they just start at the very top and just work their way top to bottom through the whole list? Or are there certain areas that maybe require focus before others?
I would not recommend going through top to bottom because the very first section of the business plan is the executive summary. And I find that's very difficult to write if you haven't really gone through the entire business plan and written out everything. Sure. So I don't think that there needs to be a specific order. I would just say pick and choose the sections that come naturally. Sometimes mission and vision is a really hard thing to go through, and you have to brainstorm a little bit more and have it sit. But the sections that I think are very important are marketing, understanding who your customer is, right? If you don't have a customer in mind and you don't know how to reach them, it's going to be very hard to have a business.
I think that helps to answer the mission and vision question too.
Right.
It's like when you understand the people that you're serving, then it's easier to understand, like, why are you doing this?
Exactly.
You get more clarity on your purpose and all of that through the people you serve. Because at the end of the day, that's what a business does.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that each section of the business plan is kind of related in some way.
Huge.
And so one section could help you fill out another section.
Yep. I would recommend that people start where they feel the most excited, because the business plan is not a little thing. Like, it takes work. So if you want to build momentum to get it done, you want to start with something where you're going to get those wins and those accomplishments. I'm like, oh, I completed this section. I completed this. So if you get kind of jazzed up about marketing and about thinking about who you're serving, start there.
Absolutely. The other section I think is really important is the financial section, which is usually the section that everyone's not excited about.
100%.
Most business owners are nervous to fill out that section because it has to do with numbers and math, and that's something that's can be intimidating.
Yes.
But it's so important because you need to know where you stand financially and what you will need to make to sustain the business and sustain your lifestyle.
I'm a big proponent of business plans. However you're going to attack that, I think it's important to really start to get the business living and breathing on paper before you take the leap. Now, granted, there's a lot of folks who start businesses without doing that step. My father was one of them, old school. That's fine. I just think if you're able to look down the road and have an idea of what obstacles you may encounter, you can prepare for them now. Business planning, I think, is probably the first thing that you should do to really try to get this vision that you have down and analyze all the aspects of it that you're going to need to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
That makes sense. In your perspective, would you advise different people to start in different places? Because the business plan is very large, has many different components to it.
I tell folks to focus on your business overview section first. Be able to articulate what it is you're setting out to do. You're selling goods and services, both. Who are your customers? How are you going to price that? Who's the management team of the business? Is it just you? Do you have a partner? Who's going to be responsible for what? Because from there, you can build out all the other elements of the plan and of the business, from the marketing, the operations, if you're going to need financing, how you're going to deploy that financing. I would start people with the overview just to get a sense of what it is they're looking to do.
Lauren.
Yes.
How does one go about, in the state of New York, starting an LLC if that's the business formation that they decide is best for them?
So they will go to the New York State Department of State website and go to the tab that says Start a Business. And it really can be done all online. So you just click that, you click a few other buttons, you pay your fee. They ask a few questions, but it's pretty simple to simply form the LLC. Right. It's all online. And then New York State does have that regulation, which I know is being considered that you have to publicize the LLC in a daily and a weekly newspaper for 6 weeks. So that's kind of the bare bones of how to start an LLC in New York. But we definitely recommend talking to an accountant, maybe an attorney if you have partners, to make sure that everything is done correctly.
What's your experience with Chat GPT? Have you ever gone on? Have you ever plugged anything in or in any of the AIs?
I have not.
Okay.
I have looked into it. I'm aware of what it is. Yeah. I am still on the fence. I think it's premature for me to really give a full opinion on. I'm a little leery of it. I have seen that it does have a lot of advantages. I actually have a client that utilized it for a very specific purpose and told me after the fact that he did deploy Chat GPT for what he sent to me, and I was in shock. Now, granted, that didn't come without any editing that he needed to do, but I can see it being a useful tool for people. I don't think it's going to be a replacement.
When you're thinking about Chat GPT, if you don't view it as a resource, if you don't view it as a tool, and you view it as hiring a person, like a replacement for a task, a replacement for somebody doing a task, that's where you get mixed up, because then you become overly reliant and you just trust what it's producing. This is the way that I think that I've used it best, is I use it to help me get more creative or to break my current creative narrowing channel. So I'll have an idea for a video that I'm going to put out. I'm like, okay, well, if that's the idea, then here's the premise and here's the question I want to ask that's going to be the title. And I'll use an AI, whether it's Bard or ChatGPT, and I'll ask, like, can you create 3 titles for this?
Okay.
And then it'll come up with 3, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And you can kind of guide it and say, can you make these in the form of a question? And then it'll do that. And so then it gets my brain spinning, like, oh, okay, what if I combine this and this, and I put those together? Oh, I like that. And that's how it works every single time.
Right.
And so that's when I feel like I'm using it like a tool. It's like an assist. It's not like, hey, come up with the titles for these 10 premises. Cool. And now I got my titles for the next 10 premises. We haven't crossed that, the uncanny valley where if you're communicating with something that's robotic or AI or something, and you can't tell that it's AI, I don't feel like we've crossed that with the creative content that ChatGPT produces. Now, on some of the less creative side, like you said, I've read stuff and I'm like, oh, that's slick.
Yeah.
That's real good. It's got a lot of capabilities, but as a resource, I think you're spot on. And why not move with the times and see how it can help your business? If it's another tool,
if it's appropriate.
And if it doesn't end up fitting, then you're familiar. But I don't think they're ready to take over the world yet.
No.
What are the benefits of working with a small business development center?
An advisor really gets to know who they're working with, right? We get to know our clients. We understand their passion. We understand their backgrounds. And so when you have that relationship with, as an advisor with a business, you kind of understand what they need to focus on, where, when they're writing their business plan, what areas they should be really focused on. We understand the local context of what's going on in the community. We know what groups to join. If I'm talking to a business and I hear some key words that they're saying, like, you should really join this networking group, or you should really be speaking to this group to see if you can do a workshop for them, right? So we kind of are able to provide not just like what a Google search can give you. There's a lot of misinformation out there with like YouTube.
As a fan of YouTube, if not immediately, over time, you learn to grow a critical eye. That's just a really good point, because I was going to consider what are the pros of choosing to go to ChatGPT versus a business advisor, but I don't see them as mutually exclusive, right? I think that you should be doing both. I think that the large language models such as ChatGPT and Bard and all the rest, I think that they're important and powerful tools, but to the same point of that YouTube is a very strong and powerful tool, and I use it to learn things too, but you have to vet it. If there are business, legal, tax implications behind decisions, I mean, you have to get with somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Right.
It might spark the idea. It's not necessarily a good idea to just run with that idea. It's good to go check with people like, does this make sense? Is this a real thing? It's nuance, but just like calculators came up to help us with math really quick, I view large language models much the same. Like it's a great tool, but just because you have a calculator doesn't mean you don't need an accountant.
Right. Trust but verify.
Trust but verify.
Right.
Exactly right.
And that's what a business advisor can help with, is really understanding the information that you're receiving, filtering it, and distilling it so that a business can really understand where they need to go.
100%. All businesses are people businesses, no matter what industry you're in or anything. It's all about serving other people.
Yeah.
And then it's all about networking and understanding the other people that are in the industry, how you can support them, how they can support you, and developing relationships.
Yep.
Well, I can't speak for other resources. I'm sure they do a great job. But at the SBDC, we have a long tenure of helping entrepreneurs of all levels. Here in New York State, we've got 22 centers. All of our services are free and confidential. Clients can use us once. They can use us as many times as they like. The benefit is that you're going to be dealing one-on-one with an advisor. All of our advisors here are full-time, Monday through Friday. So you have access pretty much anytime you need to discuss what your needs are. I think every center really strives to build out their staff in a manner that has representation in a lot of different areas. Here at our center, we have, advisors like yourself who specialize in dealing with veterans and those programs. We have an advisor that specializes in government contracting and procurement. My background in lending. So we do have a lot to offer here. And we have a network to reach out to. Not everyone is going to have an answer to everything, but one of the things we pride ourselves on here is that we'll find the answer for you. So while you're working on your business during the day, if there's something you need help with, we can get on the phone and try to get that answer for you. So you actually have, I don't want to say another partner for the business, but you definitely have another member of your team beyond what you may already consider, such as your accountant or your attorney.
As long as you need the assistance and as long as you want to show up, we got you.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
My man. Thank you so much.
Great.
You're the best.